straight tool, the first thing I do is take a cut off the side. And I'm going to zoom in here so that you guys will be able to have a look at the detail work that I'm doing. You see the tool? Position my tool post. Notice how I'm holding the tool. And I'm going to gently if it slips off, just push it up gently back into place. Now, once a cut's been taken off either side, you'll notice how it doesn't wobble. This is what we want to always maintain. Now, at this point, I try not to take my ring off the mandrel because it doesn't always go back perfectly. The next thing I need to do is reduce the amount of the outside. So I'll take the same tool and lightly, and one thing we talk about is light cuts is the most important factor here. Notice how I go back and forth to clean up the surface so that it's nice and uniform. Very light cuts will improve the surface finish, and that's really important. Now, there's a couple considerations I want to talk about here. Of course, before you begin making anything in this shop, you should have a drawing of what your design will be. And this will include an engraving on this ring. But you should also have a design which shows the shape. And typically most of these rings do not have sharp edges, so I will carefully select a tool to round off the sides before I finish. Now, one thing I want to look at, if I look at the side, it should be about 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters maximum thickness distance from the mandrel out to the outer edge. Any thicker than that, it's going to be excessive cost. Remember, the more wax, the more it costs. So now, I'm going to just do a little bit more on the outside. I've taken it to width there. And the next tool I'm going to select is this tool, my rounding tool. And I'm going to go in this side, and then flip it over, and then come in from this side. And it carefully rounds off the corner there. Now, anytime I make a ring on here, I want it to be symmetrical. I want one half of the ring on the right side to be identical to the one on the other side. If it doesn't do that, or doesn't look that way, it'll seem unbalanced. Okay, once I have my design and my shape, I'm going to stop it, inspect it, make sure there's no imperfections before I continue. Let's assume that you've got your design all finished now. Let's say you've completed your ring. And for the most part, it doesn't take very long to complete these once you've got the use of the tools and understanding of how they work. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some solvent again. I've got my little bottle here, put some on my cloth. And what I like to do is I like to use this solvent to remove any of the imperfections on that. So I'm just going to place it on the cloth like this, turn it on, let it spin, and that will smooth out all the surfaces. This is an ideal use for solvent on these, and it gives you a real nice surface finish, nice and smooth. Now, to remove this, I just grab it gently and slide it back. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm also going to go back to the inside with my solvent cloth and try to remove the edge, any sharp edges we have, because remember, this is what fits over your finger, and if there's any sharp edges where the outside or the inside meets the outside, it's going to not be comfortable to wear. It might take a few minutes, and this time I get to inspect it. One thing you got to remember is never try a ring on, because a ring that you put on your finger is very difficult to get off, and you probably will break it. So once I'm ready here, I have my ring ready to go. It's got a nice shape on the outside. If you notice the thickness here, this would be probably a little over 1 millimeter wide. And the thickness of this ring will mean that it won't bend easy when it's on your finger, and that you'll be allowed to do some nice carving inside. Now from here, you're going to grab a wood mandrel, some carving tools, and engrave your design on the surface.